placer presentar a Hilda Borko. Ella viene de la Universidad de Stanford, California, y nos va a presentar un trabajo que está haciendo en lo que ella y su equipo han llamado el ciclo de resolución de problemas, que es una estrategia de desarrollo profesional, y también sobre programa de preparación de líderes para extender esta idea. En California están aprovechando que en el currículum escolar aparece resolución de problemas para que en las aulas se pueda realizar. Entonces ella nos va a contar lo que está haciendo y le agradezco que esté aquí.
Okay.
Sin hablar en inglés. La pura introducción en español.
So if I speak too fast, go like this, okay? Like this, something to let me know, okay? Please. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about a project that I've been involved with for 10 years. For the first project for 10 years with colleagues at the University of Colorado. Actually, let me show you this. I'll show you. Let me do this. It's easier. So the first project was a project at University of Colorado with my colleagues Jennifer Jacob and Karen Kellner. 10-year project, 5 years to develop a professional development program that we call the problem-solving cycle, and then 5 more years to work with a group of teacher leaders in one school district to help them learn how to do the problem-solving cycle with other teachers so that they could do it after we were no longer part of the project. We were no longer with them. So now I'm at Stanford, Karen is Hunter, and Jennifer is at Colorado, so we're no longer together, but we still talk together all the time. So the problem-solving cycle is the professional development model that we developed. It's a series of workshops that are focusing on enhancing teachers' knowledge of mathematics for teaching and to improve their instructional practices. And this is a graphic representation, so it's all about teaching with tasks, or I think what Patricia's group would call problem solving. So it's all about how to teach with problems. The first time they get together, they meet in a group and they work on the mathematical task. So they solve the task and they think about how to work with teachers. Then the lessons are videotaped, and then the second and the third workshops in a cycle are using videotapes from the teacher's lessons to talk about student thinking and to talk about instruction. And I'll say a little bit more about each one. So, and so one set of workshops is half a school year. So we do 2 sets of workshops in 1 school year. So in workshop 1, the teachers work collaboratively to solve the problem. So it's all in groups. The teachers work in groups. They think about things like multiple representations of the problem, multiple solution strategies, the advantages and disadvantages of each of the representations and solution strategies, and the mathematical relationships among them. So, for example, if you could solve a problem by drawing a picture, by creating a table, by creating a figure, and then what are the mathematical relationships among those 3 different ways to solve the problem? Then each teacher teaches the task, then each teacher plans how they're going to teach the task with their students, and then they teach the lesson with their students, and the lessons are videotaped. So that's the first 2 parts of the cycle. Then in the second and third workshops, the focus is on video analysis. And in this, what you see here would be video from the second workshop. Here is a group of students working on a mathematical task. And what you see, it's a 3-minute clip. And what you see in the clip is 2 students don't understand what one student did. One student explains, 2 students didn't understand. The 4th student tries to explain to the other 2 students how the first student solved it. Then here you see the group of teachers who are discussing the video clip, and the student, this one who solved the problem a different way, the teachers hadn't thought about that way to solve it. So then they go back to the whiteboard and they try to figure out how he solved the problem, the way he solved it. So not only do they think about student thinking, they end up thinking about the mathematics too. So that would happen in the second video, in the second workshop, and then in the third workshop, the video would usually focus more about on the teacher and what the teacher is doing while the students are working on the task. So video plays a central role in the problem-solving cycle model. The reason is that we find it's very powerful for a springboard for discussion, to have teachers talk about student thinking, to have teachers talk about instructional practices. So what I'm going to do next is have you experience that in a very shortened version. But first I want to talk a little bit about why we think video is so powerful. So it's powerful in professional development. It brings the classroom into the professional development. So professional development is not something abstract. It's very concrete about what goes on in the classroom. It brings teachers, it makes the ability for teachers to work collaboratively because they now have an experience that they can share and that they can talk about. And we can use the video, the PD leader can use the video to guide the discussion about particular issues that are important for the teachers to think about. And for research purposes, it's also very powerful. So in the professional development part, we would watch a very short clip of the video. For analysis for research, we would watch the whole lessons. And one thing is we could have a record of interactions that if you were observing in the classroom, you might not notice. You can investigate multiple research questions because you can keep watching the video again and again with a different research lens. And you can use multiple analysis techniques. So you could rate it, you could code, you could give an overall impression, you could do a more qualitative analysis, many different ways that you can analyze the video, again, because you can watch it again and again. I should say a little first. So I'm going to show you the problem that you're going to watch the video about. So take maybe 2 or 3 minutes to think about it yourself and then to talk to somebody next to you about different ways of solving it. Okay? So this is the task. It's called a pattern task because you're trying to find what's the pattern and how's it growing. Okay. Time. So, when the teacher does this with students, they would have half an hour, 30 minutes maybe, to solve it. When we do the workshop with the teachers, to prepare the teachers, we would also do 30 minutes. You just had 3 minutes. So, who wants to share? How is it growing? Anybody? Okay, this is the easy one. How many here? How many altogether? How many blocks?
9.
How many blocks here?
9 plus 6. You got 6.
9. How many here? How many here? 11. How many here? 18. How many here? 27. So did anybody figure out how many would be in figure 0, the first one? Let's do an easier one. How about figure 4, the next one? Anybody figure it out? Actually, 38. The next one has 38. So from here to here, it grows by 7. I'm sorry, from here by here to here, by 7, then by 9. So it goes from 11 to 18 is 7. From 18 to 27 is 9. Okay. So that's generally what's happening here. And again, teachers would even have half an hour, and students would have half an hour. So I don't expect you to have worked the whole thing out. The other thing we would have teachers do is show different ways that they solved it. First, we would ask, did anybody get the general rule? And then we would say, and how did you solve it? And so they could show different ways that they solved it. So, oh, I moved this one to here and this one to here. So then I had easier shape to work with, and then I just had these extras here. Is one way to do it. Lots of different ways to do it. Or I counted and I made a table, and then I could see how it was growing with the table. Okay? So that's the model of professional development. Very quickly. It provides a common experience for the teachers. It situates the instruction, the PD in their own instruction using artifacts from their own classrooms, video. It acknowledges and it builds on the central role of community. There's lots of research in education that shows that teachers learn better in community, just like students learn better in community. And it's designed to be long-term and ongoing, and adaptive to participants' needs and priorities. So if the teachers say, we want to work on the kinds of questions that we're asking when we walk up to a group, then we would pick video clips with that. If the teachers say, we want to work on how we wrap up a problem-solving task, at the end, we would use videos like that. And we can keep changing the video. We can change the focus as they learn some things and we want them to learn other things. Okay, so this is the second half of our project. The second half of our project, the second phase was we wanted to work with teacher leaders at schools in order to help them learn to do the professional development so that we could spread it to more schools. This is the model. There's a summer academy with the teacher leaders. It's 3 days. And they prepare to introduce their school to the problem-solving cycle. Then we have the first leader support meeting, and they work on how we're going to present the task to our teachers. They conduct the first workshop. Then we have another leader support meeting where we work with them. Sometimes we work with them to select video clips. Sometimes we've already selected them depending on where the teachers are as leaders. And we work with them on how to plan a video-based discussion, and they rehearse the discussion with the other teacher leaders in the group. Then they conduct the workshop, and then we repeat the same thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we worked with this with one school district. So I guess is this clear what we did, how we worked with them?
So,
Lisa?
Who are the leaders? Are they...
The leaders are teachers that the principal or the school district selects for us to work with. So they come with different amounts of mathematical expertise. They come with different degrees of instructional expertise. They're volunteers, so they all want to be there. They all want to take on this role. and they have different amounts of experience leading professional development. So
How long would that take? One semester?
So in the work we've been doing, we work with them for 2 years. So this is one semester, then we do another semester, then we have another summer academy, and then we do it again. And by then, we hope that they're able to do it on their own with somebody from the district taking our role to lead these things.
And the teachers working with them are the teachers from their school?
You work with teachers from your own school. Yep. So this is the research project that we did about it. We worked with one school district. The schools volunteered, and the teachers within the schools volunteered if they wanted to participate. And the principal, in conversation with the district maths person, chose the teacher leaders. And what we did is we had the 2 summer academies and we had the 2 cycles each year. So altogether, 2 summer academies and 4 cycles of work with them. Yeah?
The leaders are going to work in their own school?
Yes. And they're teachers full-time when they do it. So they're working with their own classrooms full-time. They get 6 days during the school year where they get substitutes so they can meet with us. Oops. And then these workshops are conducted. Most of the schools have what we call late start days or early release days. So 1 day a week, the students would either start 2 hours late, or 1 day a week the students leave early, and that's when they do the workshops. So 2-hour workshops. Another question? Okay. So that's the project. And we're now working with a different school district, and it looks a little bit different because we have to make the model work, the details of the model work with the district and how it operates. So we have 2 big sets of research questions, and I'll talk a little bit about each set of research questions. The first set of research questions is about changes in the classroom. So changes in the teacher's knowledge. We call it implementing the problem-solving cycle. So changes in the teacher's knowledge of mathematics for teaching, changes in their teaching practice, and impact on student achievement. So 3 different types of questions about the teachers in the classrooms. And I'm just going to give you a sample of the findings. So when you looked at teacher change, there were changes in their mathematical knowledge for teaching, and there's a test that's been developed in the US that we use on that. And it's not just a test of the mathematics, it's a test of the kind of mathematics that you need to teach with tasks. So here's a problem. What are the mathematical principles that you use to solve it? Changes in their classroom instruction. The largest change that we saw was in the way that they worked with the students. I'll show you a little bit more about that. No, actually, I won't show you more about that. So that kind of change was the extent to which they elicited ideas from students, the way that they responded to students' mathematical questions, the way that they encouraged students to give explanations and justifications. And we think that the reason that their work with students changed more than anything else is because that's really what we emphasized. And you could see that in the video clip that I showed. So there was more change in that than in other aspects of their teaching. Student achievement is very complicated to look at because the students change year to year, so that when you're comparing one year to the next, the students are different. And in general, it takes a while for teachers, when they learn a new practice, to start to do it well, and then to set up their classroom so that from the beginning they're doing it well, so that you would see a change in students. So with that said, we did see some patterns of improvement in the student achievement data. Yeah?
What's the difference between classroom instruction and working with the students?
Working with the students is one dimension of classroom instruction. So this is the dimension of classroom instruction that we saw the most improvement.
Okay, overall is modest. The improvement is modest in classroom instruction.
Right, we didn't see big jumps. We saw small changes. But here we saw small and consistent changes across all of the teachers. In others, we saw changes that were not so consistent across all the teachers.
Working with students, in what occasion do you observe? In the application of the problem that is working on, or in general classes?
Both.
In both.
And we saw more changes when they were working with the problems that we worked with them on, but we did see changes of the same kind, but just not as much in regular classroom lessons. Yeah, good question. So the next set of research questions had to do with how well the teacher leaders were able to run the professional development. And again, we had 3 general questions. To what extent did they enact the problem-solving cycle with integrity to its key features? What features did they enact particularly well? And which ones were the most problematic to enact? And for this, we used an observation system that was ratings. It's a system that already exists in the US as well, called the Professional Development Observation Protocol. And it has a number of different dimensions, and you rate the whole workshop on each of the dimensions. And again, I'm just going to show you a sample of some of what we found. So one set of dimensions has to do with the teacher's specialized content knowledge, the teacher's knowledge that they need in order to teach mathematics. And can you read this back there? So we looked at 2 different things. We looked at solution strategies, how many ways to solve a problem, and we looked at representations. So if you think back to the pattern task, when I said you could use tables, you could use drawings, you could use, actually, we have them use manipulatives, and solution strategies, how many different ways are there of explaining the answer? And for each one of them, we said, we looked at were they able to engage teachers in discussion of solution strategies and representations? Were they able to get teachers to discuss the relationships among solution strategies and the affordances, the advantages and the disadvantages of each of the solution strategies, and the same 3 sets of questions for representations? And what we found is that they were rated more highly on their ability to have teachers talk about the different solution strategies and representations. And it was more difficult for them to get the teachers to talk about the relationships among the strategies and the advantages and the mathematical advantages and disadvantages. So Mathematically, when you use a table, what are some of the advantages of using a table? What are some of the limitations? Mathematically, if you tried to do it by moving cubes around, what are the advantages and disadvantages? And mathematically, how are they related?
Sorry if you mentioned this. Are the teachers mathematics specialists? Are they primary teachers?
Okay, so sorry, I didn't mention it. They're middle grade teachers, so grades 6, 7, and 8. And they come with different backgrounds. So some of them have backgrounds as they get certification as elementary teachers, which allows them to teach through the 8th grade. Some of them have secondary certification, which allows them to teach from 6th grade through high school, so they're stronger mathematically. And in large schools, they'll teach only mathematics. And in smaller schools, they typically teach mathematics and science, but they could teach mathematics and anything else. So again, it's different at all the schools. Yeah.
If you find some characteristic of the leaders, if you could compare them to the other teachers. I mean, they are volunteers, and they are. But what else? Are those to teach 8th grade, for example, or
No. So.
If there is some.
No, we did not. We found, so if we go back to the first set of slides, what we found in terms of the mathematical knowledge for teaching, for example, the math leaders started out with stronger knowledge than the rest of the teachers. They grew about the same amount. So they did start out on average stronger mathematically. Their instructional practice, do we have different baselines, so it's hard to tell. What we saw when we observed in the classrooms is they were not always the strongest teachers for this particular kind of teaching. They were strong by somebody's definition, but it didn't necessarily match. Because sometimes the principals, when they're giving you teachers, they don't really understand this way of teaching either. So. Okay, so back to these patterns, we think that it's easier to get ideas on the table. It's easier to get ideas, solution strategies, and representations on the table. It's harder to get people to talk about the relationships between them. So that's why we think we found the pattern that we did. So the next one I'm going to show you is the extent to which the teacher leaders use strategies designed to deepen their knowledge, the teacher's knowledge of content and students, and knowledge of content and teaching. And this is basically around the video. Okay, so this first one, really we're looking more at the first workshop. And this one now we're looking more at the second and third workshop when we analyze the data. And what I'm going to show you today is just one part of that data. Because video was so important to us, we were especially interested in the teacher leader's skill at selecting video clips and framing the viewing and the discussion of video and the strength of the discussion of video. So I'm just going to show you that part today. And the first was about the selection of video clips. When we started this project, there's several other projects in the U.S. where the people who developed the professional development are the ones who selected the video in advance. So it's a professional development program with video that then other teachers use. Many people questioned whether we would be able whether the teacher leaders would have enough experience with video to be able to select good clips. And we found that they did. So in the first school district we worked with, we found that they did. Now in the second school district we're working with, which is a much more complex school district, we're helping them more to do that. So they were not as successful at leading the discussions around the video. What we found is, and it doesn't show up necessarily in just these questions, they were able to start the conversations. So they were able to think of a good question to start the conversation, but then they were not as good at keeping the discussion on track, to keeping it focused, and to keeping it looking with the teachers to look deeply at the mathematical reasoning and look deeply at the instructional practices. So they framed the discussions well, but then what followed was sometimes not as good. And so, and this is quotes from two of the teacher leaders. So Mandy was one of our strong teacher leaders. She was one of the strongest ones. And she says, I think that after doing my first video workshop, I felt more comfortable and I was more prepared with the different types of questions and things to ask them to keep the focus moving in the right direction. So after the first one, she learned what she had to do to prepare for it. Jordan was a teacher leader who was not as strong. And he said, I think I should have sat down and thought of some better questions to ask. I had some, but in retrospect, after I replayed it in my own mind, I came up with about 4 more that I could have asked about different things. So one of the things that we learned from that, our big takeaway message is when we went to the next school district, we planned more specific ways of helping them to prepare for and to rehearse the video-based discussions. So overall, we felt at the end of the 2 years, they were able to enact the PSC with moderate integrity to the key features. The features that had the highest ratings consistently were climate of respect and trust, and I didn't talk about that one today, but they were able to build a community with their teachers. They did that quite successfully. And they were able to do a good job selecting video clips. And as I said, the lower ratings were around getting the teachers to look deeply at relationships between representations and solution strategies, and the affordances and constraints of the different solution strategies. And we also found individual differences among the teacher leaders, which those 2 quotes could think about. So I want to talk with you a little bit about the new project that we're doing. Mostly, I'm going to skip some of the slides, I think, and just talk about some of the things we're doing differently now. So the new project is with an urban school district. It's much more complex. There's a great disparity in income in the different schools. There are some schools that are very poor, some schools that the average wealth is much greater among the parents. There are also schools, some of the schools have as many as 8 different languages spoken in one classroom. So the teachers, and some of the schools, one of the schools we're working with is called a newcomer school. So all of the students, most of the students who come without any knowledge of English go to that school. So again, it's a much more complex district. And the difference in scores on achievement tests between the schools is huge. So the project goals were to develop and test a large-scale system level. So this is the goals that the school district had. Oh, and I should say it's a partnership. So when we got funding for it, we got funding for it as a partnership. And I'm realizing that since we started a little bit late, it's already almost 6 o'clock, almost 18 hours, so I understand if people have to leave. Yeah. But I'm sure people had other plans, so I'm just saying that. So it's a partnership with the district, which means they're taking a very active role in some of the decision making. So these were their goals: to develop the system, to as a PD program that was compatible with the new standards in our country, the new Common Core state standards, and to build the capacity to lead site-based professional development. And then ours was to refine our theories of teacher and leader learning. And we started with their new curriculum. Their new curriculum was a great match because it's all around tasks. So the curriculum is built around problem solving with tasks. And we started with our models, which we then were going to adapt a little bit. And I'm not going to show you some of these things because I want to show you.
How big is the district?
Actually, I'll go back to this. The district has, I don't remember the size of the number of students. It's got 11. It has 11 middle schools. We're working with middle schools.
Yeah.
So it has 11 middle schools. Yeah. So what I want to show you here is not all of the concerns that they brought to the table, but the main thing that we did differently from in Colorado was increase the scaffolding, increase the support that we're giving the teacher leaders. We modeled and debriefed everything. So we modeled how do you work with a group of teachers around a mathematics task, and we debriefed it. We gave them rehearsal time for doing the math, rehearsal time for the video-based discussions, and we debriefed them around that work. And we also pre-selected 15-minute clips so that they had to select 3 minutes within the 15 minutes. And we started with the video of a teacher leader teaching students, which is the one that you saw. So here's an example. This is one of our research assistants, Suki, and she's leading, in this case, she's leading a video-based discussion. And this is me, and she co-led it with Anthony, who's the person who was in the video. So she led the first part, and then he led the second part, and now I'm debriefing them. And what I want to show you is the kinds of questions that I asked them in the debrief. And I asked them these kinds of questions so that we could unpack how they went about planning. So I could unpack what they were doing so it serves as a model for the teacher leaders. So what were your goals for the discussion? Why did you select this clip? What did you want the teachers to notice and discuss? Did you have back pocket questions? When we talk about back pocket questions, you can reach into your pocket and use the question when the discussion starts to fall flat. Why did you choose? They showed the video clip 3 times. Why did they do that? Why did they show it the first time without a prompt? So basically, we're trying to unpack our thinking for the teacher leaders. And then we have the teacher leaders actually lead the discussion that they've planned, and they're leading it with other teacher leaders. So it's different video and different students, different discussion. And then we debrief with a very different kind of question. So we debrief with 3 kinds of questions we call praise, clarify, and polish, because we want to both build their agency, build their confidence, and also push them to grow a little bit. So we have the other teachers go in a circle and offer praise, and then ask any questions, and then ask the kind of questions about, have you thought about doing this? And what we're seeing now is, huh? So all of the other teachers who participated will go in a circle, and anybody who wants to ask a question can. And then we would also ask questions. Sometimes. Sometimes not. So we're trying to really scaffold and support more their process of becoming a leader by making the process more visible to them. Oh, I will show you this quote, because this is a quote from one of the teacher leaders who grew a lot this year. She was the first one to volunteer to rehearse in front of the group, and this is what she said. What was really helpful was practicing and constantly being reminded, what's the question? What do you want them to get or talk about? And then questioning the teachers in the discussion to try to lead them toward answering the central question. So she, at the beginning, really did not have a good idea of how to work with other teachers, and she gained a lot of confidence, and she was starting to really get it. So we feel quite good about that. We worked with 2 schools as a pilot. Next year we have 7 schools, so we're trying to think about how we work with the teacher leaders from the 2 schools and how we now work with a much bigger group. This is just where you can get more information. So this is a book that Jennifer and Karen and I wrote. It's a book that's designed for teacher leaders, for people in a school district who want to try to do this on their own. And we wrote it 2 years after the project ended. So after we'd written lots of different pieces, we just pulled them all together. And this is my address. And Janet is the other person on the project with me in San Francisco who's the head of our center. So, thank you. And I think the time was exactly right. This says 58 minutes. Okay, I can answer questions if you want. It's up to you. Okay. Lisa.
I enjoyed that, thank you. What I'm impressed by is the way the whole program is kind of pushing professional development into the hands of others. Because that's the big goal, the big dream or desire. And
Yeah.
It's so much more complex and sophisticated. Not easy, but it's a much easier thing to run a professional development program than it is to put the professional development in the hands of someone else and enable them professionally to be able to run with it. That's exciting about it.
And I'll tell you a little story about the Colorado district. By the end, their district mathematics specialist had taken on our role, and she was able to bring all the schools into it by the next year. And we collected more data that's showing continued growth of the students. And 2 years later, they got a new superintendent, and the whole thing disappeared. So it's both a story of a success and it's a story of frustration. And the math specialist was so discouraged by the new superintendent that she left. Yeah.
I must say, we have had such kind of experience.
I think everybody has. So you just keep trying. Yeah. We hope that in San Francisco, the district we're working with now, that won't happen because it's so much a district priority. Unless they throw out their curriculum, which they could do, it's likely to be something that really works for them. We hope. Okay. Thank you.